tell this in a kind of stumbling way because I am, actually I've read this one time, so I have notes, and eventually I'd like to actually learn it. But, so basically, the story has a protagonist. It's kings, queens, castles, and I realized that, like, there's a lot of traditional gender portrayal in fairy stories. So what I wanted to ask you is, would you like to have a female protagonist, a male protagonist, a non-binary protagonist, or, what gender should they have?
Whatever you want.
So I feel like it makes no difference to the story. So, like, that's a change, it's like, okay, changing what the anthropologist said, because it's always like the boys who go off and do deeds and the maidens, who are so demure. And anyway, so this is going to have, I think, a female protagonist. All right, so the story begins, as fairy stories often do, with the king and the queen and a castle. And one day, the princess is playing with her catapult. She's got a miniature catapult of all things, and she was launching it towards the forest, and at that exact moment, this old woman was coming out of the forest with a vase of water, and the projectile from the catapult broke the vase and drenched this old lady, who was super pissed, and went up to the princess and said, "I curse you to never feel at peace and at ease until you reach the immortal kingdom." Now, this idea of the immortal kingdom, maybe it was more meaningful to the Moldavian people. Anyway, back to the story. So, apparently there's an immortal kingdom. So that night, the princess goes to bed, and she can't feel comfortable, and she can't really get to sleep. And the next morning, she decides that she will go off on a journey and seek this immortal kingdom, and there she will have peace. So, she gets her bow, she gets her arrow, she gets her sword, she gets some money, and she goes off to search for this kingdom, and comes to a hermit in the woods. And the hermit says, "Where are you going, my lady?" And she says, "Well, I'm going to seek the immortal kingdom." And he says, "Oh, geez, I don't exactly know where that is, but there's a palace a ways through this forest, that if you go through the forest, and you may want to greet each of the creatures, the animals and the plants and the insects as you go, because the person who lives in the palace is an old woman, and she has a great love for all of these creatures, and so you will make her happy if you do that." So she says, "Okay, thank you." And she goes through the forest, and so she goes and she sees squirrels, and she sees birds, and she sees ants, and she sees trees, and she sees all kinds of creatures, and she greets all of them with, "Hi, hello, how are you?" And finally she gets to this palace, and at the threshold of the palace there's a dragon, big scaly dragon with smoke coming out of the nostrils, and she says, "Hi, how are you?" And the dragon's like, "Oh, I was gonna breathe you into a crisp with my fire, but you were so nice that you greeted me, so okay." And the dragon moves its head out of the way. And she goes into the palace, and there's an old woman there who's so old. And she says, "Grandmother, it's a term of respect maybe, or she called her something else. I was looking for the land of the immortal," what's it called again? Immortal kingdom, thank you. "I'm looking for the immortal kingdom." She says, "Oh, okay, well, that's a long way, but if you want to get there, then here, have this." And she gave her a gold ball of string and told her to throw it on the ground, and the string would unravel itself, and she should just follow the string wherever the ball of string went. So the princess thanked the old woman. She went out of the palace and threw the string on the ground and started to follow it. And so she went over hills and through valleys and across rivers and over mountains. And I think I'm not even recording myself. And then at last came to an oak tree. And the oak tree was actually just an oak seedling. And she didn't even see it, so she sat down and kind of bent this seedling. And the seedling was like, "Ow!" And she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "It's okay, if you just move, then I will be your friend, and we can have a friendly relationship after that." She said, "Okay, yeah, of course." So she moved out of the way, and the seedling was like, "Oh, okay, so you're welcome to live with me here for many, many years as I grow into a tall oak tree. She said, oh, well, that's so nice, but I'm actually trying to get to the immortal kingdom, and so thank you, but I won't be on my way. So she continued following the gold string through the forests and over mountains until she came to a grapevine that was growing there, and she stopped by the grapevine for a rest, and the grapevine said, you know, you could live with here until I get as big as you would see me from horizon to horizon, and we could live together and be friends for all that time. And she said, thank you, but I'm actually on my way to the immortal kingdom, and I should be going. So she continued on her way, following the golden string. Then she came at last to an eagle had been wounded and was in her path, and she was about to take out her bow and arrow and shoot the eagle. Maybe she needed food, I'm not sure why, but she took out her bow and arrow and was going to shoot the eagle, and the eagle was like, no, don't shoot me. I promise that I will help you. If you help me, I'll help you, and we will get, it'll be the better for you. So she said, okay. She put her bow and arrow back, and she picked up the eagle, and she gave the eagle some of her food and sort of tended his wing, and then went on her way following the golden thread until at last she came to a fox who was running by, and there were some hounds, some dogs that were chasing the fox, and the fox was running by, and he said, help me. And so the princess ran after and was trying to understand the situation, and the fox said, if the dogs are going to try to get me, and if you can save me, then I will help you, and it'll be worth your while. She said, okay. She picked up the fox and kept him safe, and the dogs ran by without knowing where he went, and the fox said, thank you so much, and I promise you won't regret it. And so she continued on her way following the golden thread until they came to two elm trees, and in the middle there was a spider web, and in the spider web there was a mosquito, and she was going to pass by. Maybe she didn't really have too much concern about that, but the mosquito was like, no, please save me, I promise it will be worth your while. And so she said, okay, and the mosquito said that I know where the immortal kingdom is. And she said, oh, and so please just let me go, and then I'll help you get there. So she let the mosquito go, and the mosquito said, follow your string a little longer, it's not that much farther, and when you get there, marry the king of that land's youngest son, and then you will be the queen of that kingdom. And so she thanked the mosquito, went on her way, until the golden string got smaller and smaller until it reached the gate of a beautiful castle, most beautiful she'd ever seen. It had beautiful turrets, way more than this place, and they were golden, and there was banners, and it was resplendent, sunny day. And so she knocked on the door, and the king of that castle had sent a guard to see who it was, and the princess told her story to the guard, and the guard went to get the king, and the king came down, and she said, well, I'm here to seek the hand of your son in marriage. And he said, oh, okay, well... he said, okay, well, that could be arranged if you can complete one task, one challenge. And so she said, okay, I will do my best, or whatever it is. And he said, well, what you need to do is you need to be able to hide from that. So that's the way the story went. And so they went out into the garden, and so the king had 3 sons, and they went out, and it was with the oldest son who was there, and so he said, now if you can hide from the oldest son, then I will give you the hand of marriage to the youngest son. So she thought, oh, okay, wow, so, and if you don't, I'll cut off your head. Oh my God. Okay. So she kind of went off out of the garden and was like thinking, like, how do I guarantee that I will not be found? And finally, when she was getting stressed and everything, the eagle appeared and flew down and said, okay, I'll help you. And climb on my back, and they flew off, like Gandalf style, up into the clouds, behind 9 clouds, and that's where she hid. So, finally the king's eldest son went into the garden and picked a marigold, and looked across the land and looked into the sea and couldn't see her, and then looked up into the clouds, and there behind 9 clouds he saw her, and the king said, come down, he found you. And so she came down, and then but the eldest son said, "Father, forgive her. First time she's allowed to make a mistake." And the father said, "Okay." So the middle son came out, and so he said, "Okay, now if you can hide from the middle son, I'll give you the youngest son in marriage." So she went out of the garden and was just as worried as before and didn't know how she was going to hide. And the fox came and took her and said, "Climb on my back," and he ran off with her and hid her into the depth of the earth where no one could ever find her. But the middle son was able, looking to the clouds and in the sea, was able to see her at last in the depth of the earth. And so he said, "Okay, come back." And the middle son said, "Father, forgive her. I mean, anybody could have made that mistake." And so finally the youngest son came out, and she went off again just as nervous as before. And I forgot one of the animal helpers. Okay, it was a fish. It was this beautiful, amazing fish. Okay, fish shows up and said, "Here, climb on my back. I'll hide you in the ocean." And so they swam down to the deepest part of the ocean. And the youngest son looked everywhere in the clouds and in the deepest part of the earth and couldn't see her, but then looked in the ocean and he could find her. Oh, sorry, I messed up. Okay, no. So what she did was she turned herself into a marigold. And so then the youngest son picked the marigold, put it in his basket, and was looking everywhere and couldn't see her anywhere. So finally, the king said, "Okay, you were able to hide successfully, so come out and we'll have a wedding." And so, how's my time? Because I know I'm going to be going on a while.
We don't have a time limit.
Oh, really? Okay. Is anyone? Okay. So it's probably just like 5 more minutes. But so they said we'll have a wedding. So they invited all of the musicians and the dancers and all the food, the cooks and the people of the kingdom. Everybody came, and the king said, "So welcome to the wedding, and we have one more challenge."
God damn it.
And he brought out his 3 sons and stood them, and they all looked exactly alike. They're all like triplets or something. And so he said, "If you can choose the correct son, who is the youngest son, then we'll give him to you in marriage. And if not, I'm pretty sure we're going to cut off your head again." And so she said, "Oh my God." And they looked literally exactly alike. And in that, she was starting to, get, freaking out and everything. And then the mosquito appeared by her ear and said, "I will land on the face of the youngest son." And so the mosquito flew over and landed on the youngest son's nose. And then the youngest son went up to his face like this. And she said, "It's that one." And so they did have a wedding. And and it was awesome. There was like music, there was partying, there was all kinds of great stuff. And the story goes on, but they say that stories, it's good if they kind of begin in the middle and end in the middle. And I think I'll stop there for the night. So thank you.